Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Melo Meresco. We have another awesome guest today, Carla from Foxy Luna shop. She has handmade clothing apparel, so go check her out, and I'll leave all the links below. And Carla, thank you so much for being here. How are you?
I'm great. I'm excited. Thanks for thinking of me. Honestly, when you first messaged me, I was like, whoa, no way. Me? Like, why?
Oh, that's
But yeah,
awesome.
excited to be here.
Oh, thank you. So let's start with the first question. What's your story? How did Foxy Luna shop started? And was that your plan from the beginning? Tell us all the tea.
Okay, so I actually went to school for public health. So it was never in my
Mm.
mind to think like, oh, I'm gonna be a seamstress for my career. So I was very fortunate to have an education and I'm first generation, so I was like super proud moment for myself. But right around when I was getting ready to graduate, I started dating somebody, and next thing I
Mm.
know, I was pregnant. So
Mm.
that kind of put a halt in all of my, plans, because when you're just getting out of college, everyone's always, oh, what are you doing next? So I
Mm.
was kind of like, yeah, I'm gonna get a job, I'm gonna,
Yeah.
get an apartment, all this stuff. But then I was like, wait, no, like I'm bringing a child into this world. Like I really want to dedicate myself to her, especially I
Mm.
think in our culture, like as mothers, we want to just jump into that role, right?
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, new plan. I'm gonna move back where my parents live because, family oriented over here. And I said, I'll figure out, like the career, the job, whatever, like later on, because I want to, like I said, dedicate myself to my
Yeah.
baby. So luckily, around the time where I was starting to think about, like jumping back into work and stuff, I thought, well, I really love being a mom and I want to stay home with my daughter. And I was actually going through the worst postpartum
Mm.
depression of my life. Like I had no idea that could even happen first off. So it's
Oh,
kind of
wow.
kind of scary and I was not sure, like what life wanted of me, like what am I going to do? So I realized I needed a hobby and that's kind of where it all jumped in because I went to an amazing high school where they offered all sorts of electives, and one of them
Mm.
was sewing. So I already had this sewing knowledge, and I was like, what if I just jump back in, start making clothes for my baby? I already love her. I want to dress her up, and if it's made from me, like that would be even more special, right?
Yeah.
And then I wanted to share what I was making. So I would start sharing
Mm.
with my family on Instagram here and there. And then I realized like, hey, there's kind of a market for this, like for clothing that is made from home and maybe people want to support that and maybe I
Mm.
could make something out of this. So honestly it kind of just fell into my lap and I jumped right in. I was like researching like how do you open a business and how do I do it legally and like his website logo everything. I just like became so zoned in on that and I was like
Mm.
this is what I want to do, and luckily it worked out because here I am like 4 years later, it's still growing. I'm
Please.
still doing it. I still love it, which is, I think, the number one thing that I feel so lucky about is the fact that I'm still so passionate about it and still can look back and say, like, wow, I did that?
Yeah.
So that's kind of how that started. And then I jumped onto TikTok, which is
Mm.
like funny because I feel like everyone's always joking about, like, oh, I never wanted to be on TikTok. And then, yeah, all of
And now you're
it.
there. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. So I was posting kind of about my story with postpartum depression. That's kind of my page wasn't supposed to be about my business. I just wanted to
Mm.
be like kind of that voice, especially like in our community. Like again, I didn't know that postpartum depression was a thing. Like my mom had never told me about it. Like
Mm.
he has ever told me about it. Like nobody, right? So I wanted to be like, hey, like it happened to me. Like let's see, like maybe it'll resonate with somebody.
Yeah.
And it was actually like my fourth video, and all of a sudden it started blowing up. And I was like,
Oh,
wow, like,
really?
yeah. And I was like, "Well, so many have gone through this. And if I would have known that, like when I was going through it, it would have been so much more helpful?
Yeah.
So that's kind of like where my TikTok started. Just like, let me talk about, like mom life and maybe the not so pretty aspects of it. And then I was like, well, I am still my business is still a part of me, so I started posting about that too, and then those videos started doing well, so now my whole page is dedicated to kind of both,
Yeah.
like things that I go through in my life that people may be able to resonate with, but then also like, hey, I make cute items, like maybe check them out?
Yeah.
Because I think I always tell people too, I'm like, you have to kind of sell like yourself first instead of your item. because if I wouldn't have gone through those experiences, like, my items wouldn't have been made, you know?
Yeah, they would have existed. Yeah.
Exactly. So I always tell people, especially, like, smaller businesses that are just starting out, it's like, well, find
Oh,
your why, like, why you started, and stick to it, because that's gonna resonate with people, and that's gonna be the reason why people keep coming back. Especially for me, people are like, "Oh my gosh, like, I first followed you when you were, like, super sad, and now you're not," and I was like
yeah, to see that whole
Mhm.
transformation. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
exactly. So it's like they're on this journey with you, and I love that, like, the community aspect, because again, like, I was so alone when I was going through it, but now I'm
Mhm.
like, I don't want anyone else to experience it that way, you know?
Yeah.
And not just like postpartum depression, just like motherhood in general, or being like a Latina in this country in general, like so many things that we can help each other through, and that's what I love about TikTok is the access to everyone,
Yeah, like, me
and
being
how.
able to have sorry, being able to have, like, these conversations, because
Mhm.
like, I know, like, one of the videos or most of, because when I was looking over your videos,
Mhm.
like, one of the things you also talk about is, like, being okay to cry, and, like, that was, like I love your sweater of, like, "Soy chingona, pero lloro mucho," like, I can't, like, wait to,
Yeah.
like, buy that sweater, but, yeah, I thought, like, when I was, like, going over your videos, like, seeing how, like, vulnerable you could be, like, and, like, being
Mhm.
and opening these conversations, because when I was, like, looking through your videos, one of the first videos that I saw was, like, the postpartum depression, and then just going, like, over, like, the other rest of the videos, like, there's, like, this, like, knot in my throat, like, I wanted to cry, like, oh, like, these are the type of videos where, like, people resonate and can relate to. Like, I've never been pregnant, but my, or I don't have a kid, but my cousin, she suffered from postpartum depression too, and that was, like, about 7 years ago, and we also didn't know anything about postpartum depression, and I guess, like, I'm going off topic of what I wanna talk about, but for you, like, your experience, I know you mentioned, like, you were put in a, I think it's called a psych ward or something, like, you were
Mhm.
yeah, well, that 'cause I don't really know much about it, but for you, how is that experience? Because, like, with my cousin, that didn't happen, like, I think she ended up going to therapy instead, so
Yeah.
how was
So
that
I
whole
kind
thing for
of
you?
this is kind of weird to admit, but I kind of had to like trick myself into not going to the psych ward, because what ended
Mm,
up happening was I was feeling like overwhelmed, right, as a new mom. And one of the things was like I was feeling like all these physical things, and I was like, oh my gosh, like maybe like I have some residual symptoms from just giving birth. So I remember I went to the emergency room, and I just had this overwhelming feeling of being like, I think I'm suicidal, you know?
mm,
And all of a sudden, like, you should have seen their face. They went from like, "Oh, let's help you," like, to, like, code whatever they said, and they were
mhm,
like, "Okay, we need to transfer her to this other station," which ended up being, I guess, where they have their other patients that are going through more, what is it?
like, severe.
Yeah, like, severe, like, mental, issues versus
Mhm,
the, normal, like, "Oh, someone's throwing up or someone's bleeding," It was like,
yeah.
these people need, like, other kinds of help, you know? So immediately they made me change into a garment, and they're like, "Well, you're gonna be here for a while." And it was so dehumanizing, I wanna say, because they
Mm.
weren't telling me like what was going on. It was just kinda like, "Here, you're being forced to do this all of a
And
sudden."
that's what I wanna ask you because, how you said it, like, dehumanizing, and I feel like
Mhm.
that makes you more uncomfortable and more, like, reject their help
Mhm.
because, like, are you, like, really helping me if you're just, like, what is it, like, casting me off from, like, the things that I need to
Yeah.
know? And
Mhm.
then, was the like, in the room that they put you, like, did it feel, like, safe? Or because I feel like that also, like, influences feeling safe, so how was
Mhm.
that experience for
Yeah,
you?
it wasn't a room, it was more like a ward, I guess, kind of, and everyone had their own
Like,
bed.
space?
Yeah,
Oh,
everyone had,
okay.
like, their own, like, cubicle, but there was, like, no walls. It was just, like, your bed, and I remember my dad was with me, and I would look around, and you could see everyone's face, like, there wasn't
Mm,
any privacy really, which again led to this, like, very dehumanizing experience,
yeah.
especially when they would try and come and talk to me. They're like, "Okay, so what's your plan?" And I'm like, "Plan for what? Like, I've never been in this position," you
Yeah.
know? And now looking back, I'm like, they wanted to know, like, "How are you planning to, unalive yourself?" And I was like, "Well, I'm not, like, I think I am suicidal, but I've never, like, thought of the plans." And they'd just be like,
Mm.
"Alright, we'll come back when you're ready to tell us." And I'd be like, "What?" So it was
You're
very
like, I
weird. Yeah, it was
Okay.
very weird, and even my dad was like, "What's going on? Like, how much longer do we have to be here?" And they'd be like,
Mm,
"Oh, the social worker is gonna come, like, talk to Carla, and she'll let us know, like, but we're trying to find a spot for her in another location
mm,
where they can treat her." And I was
yeah.
like, "You have no idea of anything really." Like, all I said was, "I think I'm suicidal," and all of a sudden it's, "She needs a spot in a psych ward, and we're gonna ship her off, and we don't care that she has a newborn." I literally was trying to advocate for myself. I
Yeah.
said, "I have a newborn, like, I'm still breastfeeding, like, I was here for, because I was, like, dehydrated, like, why am I all of a sudden being, like you said, kinda ostracized and really judged for something that I wanted help for,"
Mhm.
especially as a new mom, because I thought, like, what if, like, this is something deeper and I do need that help. So, luckily, I was able to, kinda process everything, and I was like, "Okay, well, they told me they're gonna evaluate me, so all I need to do is hopefully have, like, a good social worker and kind of get myself out of this position so that I
Mhm.
can go back home," because it was that wake-up call of, like, you know, I need to be there for my baby, so in a way, it was kind of a blessing
Mm,
in disguise because it helped me find the courage that I didn't necessarily have before going there.
mm,
So then once I talked to the social worker, she's like, "Oh, yeah, like, this is a misunderstanding, like, you're a new mom, of course you're overwhelmed, like,
yeah.
we're gonna give you, some resources." And I told her, like, "I've already talked to my OBGYN, like, I'm already, trying to do the things to seek the help."
Mm,
So luckily she said, "Yeah, go ahead, you're gonna follow up with your OB and, hopefully, like, good luck to you," is, like, all she said, really,
oh, wow,
after
really?
talking with her. But it was crazy because we were there for, like, 13 hours. This was, like, an overnight experience.
Yeah.
And the whole time I'm looking around, and I remember they fed me and they didn't give me, like, any utensils because I guess, some other
Mm,
patients might harm
could get
themselves
hurt,
with
yeah.
those. So I realized, like, wow, I'm on suicide watch right now, and they didn't tell me
That's
that, like,
crazy.
from the get-go. So that's exactly why I kinda just wanted to get myself out of that situation because, if I did end up in a psych ward, it would've been, like, a nightmare, I think, because or at least from what I know, it's very, like, you just do what you're told and you're fed
Mm,
medications and, all this other stuff that, God forbid,
yeah.
I would not have been prepared for.
So I have a question. When you
Mhm.
do you I don't know if you know this, but do you know if, when they give medication, is it like a forced thing or do they ask for your permission?
I believe it's a forced thing. I believe the whole experience is that you have no way to advocate for yourself because
Holy
they
crap.
know best.
That's
So,
crazy.
yeah, and it's crazy too because like you said, like on my page, like I wanna advocate for mental health, but I know that there are systems in place that may not be the best way to seek that help?
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. There I feel like we're getting off topic, but just like real quick, when
Mhm,
I majored in anthropology and there was like this book that we read in one of my classes and it was talking about mental health in the homeless community or
mhm,
homeless I don't know, like homeless people and how like the institutions that help out, they usually or sometimes they like restrict them from their medications. And then that leads them to not be in the right mindset and then like that's why we see like the I don't know like all the chaos sometimes that from like homeless people is because they don't have the medication or they don't get the right help.
mhm,
So I don't know, I feel I want now I want to talk to somebody also who like talks about these things. 'Cause it's like how can we like open these conversations where and maybe like what's that word where like we talk about institutions that need to have those changes because it's
mhm,
crazy that someone who just gave birth and then like feels uh even like a little side of suicidal and then like goes to a place where it's like you're dehumanizing or you're like I feel like just not safe. It's crazy.
mhm,
Okay. Going back to your
mhm,
story. So it was after you got out of the hospital and then from
mhm.
there like what did you do and was that when you started the shop or was that
Um, so like I said, it was like that wake-up call of like,
yeah.
wow, like I do need to like focus on what is making me feel this way, but not necessarily like seek help from a random emergency room. Um, So yeah, I actually went back and I told my parents like I need to see a therapist. Like I don't want to
Mm,
feel this way anymore. And so I actually took the time to like really figure out like what's the deep rooted issue for like my personal depression at the time.
mhm,
And so I actually went back to a therapist that had helped me transition with my college transition because that was also very hard for me and that kind of
mm.
initiated my journey with anxiety and
Wow.
because you know growing up our parents are like anxious like they're just free, you know? Like
Yeah.
no, like I like this is kind of crippling anxiety, you know? Like I don't want to go anywhere, I don't want to see anyone. Like and at college, you know, I didn't want to meet new people because it would imply like, you know, going out with them and all
Mm,
this stuff. And I just felt very like watched. But anyway,
mm,
so I went back to her because I trusted her and you know, I remember calling her and I was like, "Hey, you know, I hope you're doing well, but like I'm not." 'Cause, you know, I had already formed that,
yeah.
relationship
But
with her, and I was like, "I really think I'm going through it." And so she immediately was like, "I have an opening tomorrow." So I was like,
wow.
"Thank goodness," because 'cause I'm already, you know, like, so checked out and so numb at that
Mm,
point. So when I reached out to her, you know, I told her everything that was going on, and a major part was, my daughter's dad was, like, not very involved, so I was
mm,
like, "Here's what's going on," and, like, I feel inadequate as a mother because I see my mom, and it's, like, so natural to her. So, you know how they say, like, comparison is the thief of
yeah.
joy, like, there was so many, things going on, so many external factors, but deep down it was like, um, you know, deep down everything was making me that depressed. And she literally looked at me and she says, "Carla, you're angry." And I was like, "What?" Because we had already established in therapy before that it's like, "Carla, you don't like to be angry." So,
Mm,
for me personally, like, it comes from childhood, you know, my parents would always be like, "Oh, eres fea cuando te enojas," like, you know, "You're so
mm,
ugly when you're mean and you're mad," and all this stuff, so from a very young age, I learned to, like, never feel angry. So now that I was angry at the fact that nothing was going like I wanted, you know?
yeah.
I didn't have this, like, beautiful bond with my baby because I felt like a threat to her, you know? I felt like if I'm not good enough to be her mother, then maybe I shouldn't be her mother at all, you know? And then I have this relationship that's, like, crumbling. So I felt like, well, if I'm not gonna have, like, a man in my life, then, you know, like, what is this family that I've always wanted, you know?
Mm,
So basically, she told me, like, "You're angry and you feel inadequate, but you really haven't given it a shot." This was literally, like, 2
mm,
weeks in. My daughter was a 2-week-old, you know,
yeah.
still fresh. So she told me, you know, like, "You really need to just jump in and prove to yourself that you can do it. It doesn't matter if this man's gonna be in your life or not. Like, this is what you want. This is the baby you've always wanted." You know, like, we would talk about, like, when I was first in therapy, like, I just wanna be a mom, you know, that's my
Mm,
calling. And so luckily, she kinda snapped me out of it, and I was like, "You're right, you know, like, I am angry, but this isn't the way to deal with it. This isn't the way to deal with it."
mm,
Because the way I was dealing with it was like, "Oh, like, let me just be, um, let me just kind of rely on other people." Like, I was relying on my mom to take care of my baby, and
mm,
I was relying on my dad to talk to my ex and kinda, you know, like, set him straight, like, "What are you
yeah.
doing? Or what are you not doing?" kinda thing, you know?
Mm,
So I was like, "Alright, I need to, like, face these head on." And then, one of the tools that she gave me was EMDR therapy, which I
what's
haven't talked about, I don't think, on my TikTok, but it was life-changing. Because what it does is it takes whatever reaction you initially had to a traumatic experience, like, for instance, me, you know, being a fresh new mother and believing already that I had failed, like, that's
mm,
traumatic, you know?
yeah.
And you process it and you implant a new idea instead of me being a failure. It's like, no, I'm new at this. Didn't come naturally, but I can become better at it, you know?
Mm. Sounds like
And
affirmations.
yeah, exactly. But it's like planting affirmations in your brain, like at the subconscious level.
Yeah,
Cause
you
I
get on a
remember,
neutral.
yeah, exactly. Cause I remember like working with her before on like little traumas. Like I remember one time my mom told me like I wasn't ready to drive because we had gone out like
Mm,
to practice. I was 16. We had gone out to practice and I almost crashed into something. She's like, "You're not ready, like, this is too soon, like,
Mm.
we shouldn't have done this," and that was traumatic, and now I can talk about it, and because it's like now it's kinda funny, because we worked on it, and instead of me feeling like, "Oh, I'll never be able to drive,"
Mm.
we worked on the therapy, and it's like, "Well, you will be able to drive?" Anyway, back to the that, I did go see her a few more times, but really, she just told me, "You need to go head on," like, "What are you afraid of?" And I told her, "I'm afraid of being a bad mom." And she
Mm.
said, "Well, then you just need to, take care of your baby and prove to yourself that you aren't a bad mom." And I told her, like, "I'm afraid of going out in public with my newborn, not because,
Mm.
it's like unsafe or nothing, but I was afraid of people seeing me be a bad mom?" So it was like all these things, and she said, "Nope, you're gonna face them head on. Like your first homework assignment is like go to a restaurant with your new baby, like, go show
Mm.
her off, go do the things that you normally would be doing if you weren't feeling this way?"
Yeah.
And I remember that first time, it was so hard because initially I was like, "Oh yeah, I can do this." And then all of a sudden, the thoughts start happening and I'm like, "What if she needs to be changed? Like, how am I gonna go take her to the bathroom? Like, what if there's no like changing
Yeah, that's
table? What
thing.
if I didn't bring diapers?" Like it just every single time that there was an outing, it would become like this dreadful experience because I thought like I'm not prepared for this. But again, it was because
Mm.
I hadn't done it before.
Yeah,
I've
it's
never
like,
been
how
a
are you gonna
mom
know?
before. Exactly. So thank goodness for her. She really pushed me to go out of my comfort zone and just, face these things head on. I even told my mom, like, "Mom, thank you so much for helping me, but by helping me, we're doing me a disservice,
Mm.
because I had given her my baby essentially. I remember there was a point where my anxiety was so high. I was like, "Mom, I can't do it anymore. Like, please, you raise her." I said those
Mm.
words to her. And so when I had come back from the therapy, I was like, "No, give her back to me. Like, this is my child." I was like, "I'm sorry, I don't know what I was thinking, but let me take that back." So yeah, I'm really glad that I did that, especially because it is so hard to say like, "Hey, I need the help." Like,
Mm.
brain's telling me things that aren't true.
Yeah, it's
And
yeah,
and
no,
so
the
and so yeah, and it was hard especially because, being Latina, being Mexicana, it's always like, "No, like, ponte las pilas, like, you can do it, like, it's all in your head, like, you just need to pray about it." And I was like,
mm.
"No." Like, I'm gonna actually advocate for myself. And I remember telling my parents, like, I need therapy, I need maybe antidepressants, like something, like this is not going the way that I wanted it to. So anyway, I did all of the therapy, the medication, the facing my fears, going out in public with my baby, all the things. And I want to say by like 4 months in, I was good. I was like, okay, I
Mm.
am finally falling into the role that I've always wanted. So I was finally, like, living that bliss of, like, being a new mother,
Mhm.
but it's still kinda painful because I feel like I was robbed in a way of the
Mm.
experience because I didn't have that, like, that newborn bonding and, like, I don't even remember most of that time that I had with her just because it was so, like, survival mode in my head.
Mm.
But anyways, we got to that point, and then that's when I realized, like, yeah, I kinda wanna do something for me now?
Mm.
Because I felt like I mean, obviously, I was getting better for myself, but it was more so that I could take care of my daughter, and
Mm.
then I decided, like, I want something for me?
Yeah.
And that's when I got the idea to start my business. I was like, "What if I start a business and I'm able to stay home and, still care for her?" Because, things did end with her dad, and I was like, "Well, I'm gonna be a single mother, but I wanna at least give myself the opportunity to work from home and not have to, rely on a babysitter or a daycare or even my
Mm.
own mom." Um, so that's how that all panned out. I was like, "Okay, I'm finally good. I feel, like a good mom finally, and now I'm gonna do this for me and my daughter, like, I'm gonna
Mm.
push to make this business happen." And, like, here we are 4 years later, like, I've done so much with it, and I'm so proud of myself, and I feel like the name of your podcast, Me Lo Merezco, like, it resonated so hard with me because it's not easy for me to say that I'm proud of myself?
Yeah.
Because I still have that, like, self criticizing voice in my head that's like, not enough yet. Like you need to go for this goal and this goal and this goal and
Yeah.
prove to this person that you can do this and this and this. So it's like, no, I need to sit back and like, wow, I did that and like me lo
Yeah.
merezco, you know?
Yes. There's like in like in my journey and then like the podcast I listen to and everything is like one of the struggles, especially for women and Latina or like anybody, is like taking or accepting the things that you've accomplished and then celebrating those wins fully because
Mhm.
sometimes it's like okay I did this like yay and then it's like okay what do I have to do next and it's like no like you really have to like take that especially for those like for me for in my examples like I also struggle with like do I deserve this right now or am I good enough all of that and then but it's all about building up the wins and then looking
Mhm.
back it's like I did this. Like I am a chingona. Like what?
Mhm.
Like
Yeah.
and then it's like yeah, it's just really celebrating our wins. And yeah, we could have goals, but and then we do have goals, and then it's like okay, and I'm gonna be able to accomplish them because I already did all these things when I was in my lowest too. So that's so awesome. And then thank you for sharing like your whole story. Like, I saw you like tearing up. Like, ah.
Yeah, I'm just like a, I don't know, emotional person. And I remember even in therapy, my therapist was like, wow, you cry a lot, but it's a gift, you know? Like, because like you were saying earlier, like you make other people feel those emotions and feel that it's okay. And it's, I don't know, it's something that I've had to come to terms with, especially,
Mm,
because my parents, like I was telling you earlier, they told me to never be angry, but they also told me to never cry. It's like this
mm,
full circle moment because now I'm
yeah,
teaching my daughter as well, like cry it out, like let it all out and we'll work together on what was making you feel sad, you know?
yeah. I wanna go to like a video that you posted
Hmm.
with I believe it was like I don't know I think you were talking about how you suffer from anxiety and you were in this therapy session and then your dad asked you like oh like I see you're like feeling better like tell
Hmm.
me the tea and then he
Yeah.
was like you know what I think I might have anxiety too so after like that conversation like how has he like asked for help too? Because in a way that you open that conversation for him,
Hmm.
and then and it's like a family thing, so it's like now you could speak about it more. So how is that conversation afterwards? Like,
Yeah, so I think the gist of the conversation is we both had more compassion for each other
mm,
because especially me like being I always say my dad's favorite. No, I'm just kidding. I've always seen him as like this super strong individual who's like so selfless and just does
mm,
everything, never complains. So to hear him tell me like, wow, like I struggle with anxiety too was just so crazy. Like I never thought like, wow, like my dad is human too, you know?
mm-hmm,
But yeah, so after that conversation, like we still talk about our anxieties to each other. And a lot of my dad's, I mean, not without like giving too much away, but a lot of his is like time oriented. Like
mm,
he always feels rushed and he always feels like, oh, I have to go home and see my family, because
mm,
he does work sun up to sundown. So I
wow,
think a lot of his anxiety is like, well, if I'm working so much, like I do want that time with my family. And like if I'm not there, like, do they know that I'm doing this for them?
mm,
So maybe I think a lot of dads who are, stereotypically the ones who work and work long hours, like maybe a lot of them have the same anxiety?
yeah,
But yeah, my dad, I don't think he would necessarily seek therapy for it, but it is
mm,
something that we talk about, like if he tells me like, oh my gosh, like I'm feeling so anxious and for this reason, I try to tell him like, okay, like remember what we talked about, like
like
these are
coping
all
mechanisms.
yeah, exactly. I'm like, remember the coping mechanisms I told you? Like you need to ground yourself first off.
Yeah,
And then we can really talk about like what is the reason that you're feeling this way because most of the time it's kind of I don't want to say fake because our emotions are never fake, but it's kind of like this external factor that we give so much power to that isn't actually there? Like
mm-hmm,
him telling me that he always wants to rush home, it's like, well, we were always excited to see you? I never thought like,
mm.
oh my gosh, se está tardando, like he's taking forever, you know?
Yeah.
So even just by saying that, it's like it gives him this whole new perspective.
Mhm.
Or I remember him telling me, like, "I knew that my daughters grew up because they didn't run to the door to see me anymore," you know? And that
Mm.
was kind of like, there's these etapas, but now, like, my daughter runs to him whenever he comes through the door, you know? So it's
Yeah.
like there's these little things and I guess ways of kind of making my dad see, like, you might feel like you're losing things or that you have all this pressure, but it's really pressure you're putting on yourself, you know?
Mhm.
So I try to tell him, like, if there's anything I can say to kind of ease that anxiety for him, like, I'll
Mhm.
say it. I'm like, "Well, my daughter loves running to you," or
Yeah.
I'm always looking forward to whenever you have time to come visit us, because now it's, now that I live away or out of the house, it's like, well, maybe he feels rushed whenever he tells me
Mm.
like, "Oh, I'm gonna come see you today, Carla." There's no rush. I always tell him, "No rush." Just to like kind of implant those little reminders that there is no rush for anything, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah, I think I do find it interesting that um it took like me getting therapy for him to really open up to the idea that maybe he also had anxiety. But again, kind of how I mentioned in my video, he never had the resources to pull
Mhm.
up and be like, "What is this?" You know?
Yeah. Oh, there's this podcast episode I listened to with
Mhm,
Marco Antonio Regil's podcast with Nilda. I don't know how to pronounce her name, but like if you search it up, Marco Antonio Regil and Nilda, she's
mhm,
I believe she's a relationship therapist, but in this conversation they're talking about self-esteem and they were
mhm,
talking about like how there's no good or bad self-esteem because if it's good or bad, that means you're comparing yourself to someone, but then like why are you comparing yourself to someone? And then so it's like you have to see from which lenses are you looking at your life because if usually the beliefs that we have they're because our parents told us, society told us, whatever it is. So it's like you really have to go deep and be like, is this is this is this belief that I have? Is it from my own lens, my own perspective, or is it from somebody else's? And it goes like back to like weird that has like, am I seeing this from my own perspective, or am I seeing from like somebody else? Like, or is it just like an expectation that I feel like I need to fulfill? And then most of the
mhm,
time it's like no, it's like my own expectation. It's like my own you could say like, yeah, let's just go with like expectation. And it's like, no, it's not like that. Like, and then having those conversations like, oh, like, do you feel this way or that way? And then you're like, no, actually I don't feel that way. And then it's like, okay.
mhm,
And how you said it's like it eases down the anxiety. I think for like I want to share like a bit of like my dad's story because
uh-huh,
I also had like a similar conversation because I think there's like a few weeks ago and my dad like tends to like overthink a lot and that causes him anxiety. So for him, how he explains to me is like he's always thinking and sometimes he's like on a conversation he's in a conversation, but he's not present in the conversation because in the back of his mind, it's like he's like thinking, "Oh, what do I have to do now? What do I have to do? I have to do this later, and then that." And then for me, that was crazy. Like, I was like, "What?" Because for me, my mind doesn't function like that. It's more like for me. I tend like to numb my
mhm,
thoughts sometimes, or sometimes I don't even think. It's like no, no. It's just that's just how my brain works. And for me to like find out about that was like, okay, that's crazy. And like one of my goals is like if I ever make when I make, money is like
mhm,
in that conversation we talk about like would you be open to like going to therapy and then and you know how like in Hispanic communities especially is like therapies for like los locos and it's like and
uh-huh,
then I try to like like you know what it's not for like los locos it's for you to get help and like sometimes like I want to help but like, sometimes like we like chocamos so it's like oh like I don't know how to help you and it's like if you
mhm,
find like a good resource a good therapist like so like one of my goals is like for him to go to therapy. So you like talk it
mhm,
out. I don't know, but yeah, it's like you sharing your story about with your dad, and maybe even like with your mom or like our parents, and then having these conversations and then them being able to evolve as a person because they also had like, their experiences where it's like they didn't have the resources that we have now. So again, it's like really awesome to have these conversations with our parents. But Yeah, I wanna go back to your business. So
Mhm,
you started it after, like, around, like, when your baby was, like, 4 months, and, you learned how to sew in high school because I thought that was pretty awesome.
mhm,
So how did I know you mentioned that you did your research, was it during that time and then you started, or was it like you started it like, "Okay, I have the idea, I'm gonna do the sewing and all that while I'm doing my research." Like, how was that process for you?
so I've always been like, oh, goody two shoes, like followed everything by the book. Like I didn't want to get in trouble, so
Mm,
I did everything like out. Like let me open my LLC, let me open my bank
mm,
account, let me register with the state. Like here's what I'm gonna do, you know.
yeah.
So I did all the research and everything first, and I want to say it took me like a good like 3 months,
Oh,
just
wow.
because I really wanted to like make sure that I was doing everything correct. Because there's also like certain rules about like selling clothing to kids, like you want to make sure that you're using the right kind of fabrics and that there's not going to be
Mm,
like any any chances of like suffocation in your clothing. So
mm,
it's like so many other things that I had not thought about, which I'm glad I did the research for because God forbid like I try and sell something that's like, oh, actually you can't sell that, you know? So I wanted to
uh-huh.
make sure that everything was good. So I did my research and I remember I told my dad about it. And I was like, hey, like I want to start a business. Like I don't want to start a job and like be away from my daughter, you know?
Mhm.
He was all for it because, my dad's very like he's like a very like go-getter mindset. He's like,
Mm.
all right, now you told me, now I need to see you do it, you know? So I was like, okay, the pressure is on. Um, so yeah, so then once I opened it up, I actually started with this idea of clothing that extends sizes.
Mm,
At the time, I was like making clothes, but my Dedecita would like outgrow it within the month, you know?
mm,
So I was like, there has to be a better way. As cliche as that sounds, like, there has to be a better way. And so I found these patterns online that were like, oh, this pattern would fit from 3 months all the way to 12 months, you know? And I thought,
mm,
perfect, like I'll market these and be amazing. And so I dedicated like a good like 2 weeks to sewing up so many outfits and we were all in this grow with me style.
mm,
And I remember I launched and I sold two. And for anyone else, that probably sounds like, "Oh, man, that sucks," like, like but for me, I was like, "Alright, that means we can do better," you know? Like, this
mm,
idea might have flopped, so I stuck with it a little while, and I was like, "Maybe I didn't, like, share, like, how awesome these would be," you know? So I was like, "Are you
mm.
tired of your kid outgrowing their clothes?" You know, like, I need to market it a different way, like, get the message across. I remember I even made, like, a little, um a little GIF where it was, like, the 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 romper was like, "This one," I was like, "Watch it grow, like, it grows." So I was, like, really trying to get the message across, but eventually I was like, "Alright, let me try, like, sewing just, like, clothes that I would be making, like, for my daughter."
Mm,
Like, the other clothing, like, little sets that you would normally see in stores, and those actually took off way faster. So I'm always the kind of
mm.
person where I was like, "I can be proven wrong," you know, like, "This idea, it was
Mhm,
cool, but it didn't take off, so, like, now let me stick to these other clothes." And that's when it really, like, started growing, and I was having, like, so much fun making it, and I
mm.
remember at the time I was working around my daughter's, like, nap schedule, so I was like, "Alright, like, I can sew while she's napping because my machine's, like, super loud, and so it, like, all worked out, and eventually I got to the point where I got really overwhelmed with it, you know? It was,
Mm,
like, a good problem to have, but I didn't know how to navigate, like, so many orders, and I didn't know how to say no to new orders. So through the years, I've
mm,
kinda had to learn how to balance it out, you know?
yeah,
Because I'm the kind of person where I want to, say yes to all the orders, not because I'm greedy, but because I know that people want my clothes, and that's I take pride in that. I take pride in the
mm,
fact that, people can shop anywhere, but they wanna shop with me, and, I didn't wanna disappoint anyone.
mm.
But eventually I learned, like, there has to be a limit, I can't be my own little sweatshop, like,
Setting a
there's n
boundary.
yeah, exactly, it has helped me in more ways, I wanna say, like, having a
Mhm,
business because, like you said, I'm able to now set those boundaries of, like, "Okay, I have this many orders, I can still manage, but
Mm.
anything over that, like, there's no way, you know? So I have had to be that business owner that it's like, "Hey, I messed up. I took on way too much
Mm.
and I thought I could handle it, but turns out I can't. So let me give you some options. If you wanna wait longer, cool. If you want your money back, cool." So I've had to, really own up to my mistakes, which I think has helped
Mm.
me as a person as well because it's like before, I don't know if this has anything to do with it,
Mm.
but I'm a Scorpio, so I feel like I have, like, such a huge ego, and I
Mm.
never wanna be proven wrong, and I'm like so before I would, like, take on all those orders, and I'd be like, "Even if I'm, like, crying, I'm gonna get through that," Like, I don't want anyone to see that I
Mm.
actually couldn't do it. But now I'm able to be like, "No, like, there's limits to everybody, like, everybody has limits."
Mhm.
And it's also giving me the confidence to be like, "Yeah, like, I know my limitations, I know my boundaries,
Mhm.
and it's okay to express them. It's okay to say, 'Hey, I messed up,'" especially to my community that I feel like sees me as, um, this mother that I am and how dedicated I am to my child and how this all started because I wanted to provide for her.
Mhm.
I think it's always better to be real with people, and I think that's also helped me in my business. Because anytime there's been, even if it's, like, not even my fault, like, sometimes I'll order fabric and it's like it's stuck somewhere in transit or,
Mm.
stuff like
Mhm.
that. It's always better to just be upfront with people, so I've learned that as well throughout my business. And yeah, luckily, um, like I said, it's just been growing, and now that I'm on TikTok, I transitioned to other items, which I never thought would happen because I always thought, like, "No, like, my thing is sewing," like,
Mm.
that's what people like me for. So it actually wasn't planned though, my sweater that you mentioned earlier. 'Cause I just thought like, "Oh, like, let me try it." I remember I had given it as an option, like, in
Mhm.
addition to the clothing that I was sewing, like, "Hey, if you wanna match with your kid, like, you can get a sweater and I'll stamp the image on
Mm.
it?" But I didn't think it would, like, completely take over my business. So when I posted that video, I remember telling my sister, I was like, "Wow, look at this person, like, telling me to stop crying." Because like you said, I cry in a lot of videos, like, it just happens. The waterworks will come when they come. And so I remember telling her, I was like, "I don't wanna, like, be mean to this person because there's obviously something else going on with them."
Mm.
And I, even peeped their profile, and there's no reason to be mean back, but I kinda wanted to make a statement.
Mhm.
Because I did kinda wanna, stand up for myself and everyone else who's watching my videos. So when I posted my comeback, which was literally just my sweater as a statement that "Soy chingona, pero lloro mucho." I was I was really thinking like, yeah, this is me in a sweater, and if you don't like it, then, oh well, so I
Yeah.
felt, like, really good about it, and I was like, "Alright, this is, like, a fun little, comeback or whatever," and then next thing you know, like, the video blows up, and now, like, I'm over here with boxes and boxes of sweaters. So I just think it kinda ties back to what you were saying, like, people like, to resonate with videos, like, I think a lot of people are like, "Oh, TikTok, like, it's just somewhere to, kill time and scroll for a few hours." Like, no, I'm inspired so much on that app, especially the end of last year when so many small businesses were getting the recognition that they deserve,
Mhm.
and even, um like, not just, clothing businesses, but, restaurants and all these other things, and it's just like, wow, like,
Yeah.
there's so much power on the app, and, like, imagine if we all used it for good all the time? So I get so inspired on there, which is why, like, I keep posting and hope, that it, like you said, resonates with people, and it's
Mhm.
it's still and it's fun too, like, I remember finding that video, I was like, "Look at me," you know?
Mm. It was like that F-bomb right there. It's awesome.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, how you were saying about, like, the experimentation, no, not the experimentation, but, like, you in a way, you're like wait, there's, like, 2 points I wanna go, it's like I wanna say them both at the same time, but so, like, one of them was, like, you putting off that sweater was, like, a form of, like, experimentation, and that's, like, the whole thing with businesses too, is, like, you gotta
Mhm.
experiment with, like, "Oh, what's working, what's not working," and in one of the video I'm like okay, before I say what I'm gonna say, and the other thing was, like, also, like, pivoting, because sometimes yeah, it was, like, pivoting into, like, something new, which goes to, like, there's, when you start, like, something new Oh, I know, I forgot. But, sorry. I forgot, like, my thought. But, like, the point was, you experimenting with, like, that and then, like, showing other people how you're pivoting to something else, you're also letting them know again, being transparent with your journey, you're letting them know that you could do it too, and then, like, it's okay to set your boundaries, it's okay to set your limits,
Mhm.
it's okay to go and sell something else, because if that's what brings the passion, then, like, go for it, like, there's nobody this is your business, you're the one in control, so, like, if you wanna sell this instead, like, fuck it, just go and do it, like, you don't have to nobody's stopping you, nobody else is gonna pay your bills, nobody's gonna give you the happiness but yourself.
Mhm.
So, yeah, that's so awesome, like, sometimes, like, we do things where, like, "Oh, yeah, this is" like, I'm just sharing my story, but, like, sharing your story is, like, not everybody does it, I know everybody and sometimes, like, people could, like, feel the authenticity
Mhm.
and, like, the transparency, like, there's that energy, is like like, you could just see it and feel it, and it's awesome that, like, you're able to, like, share that and, like, share all of that. Anyways, I went on a tangent, but, I wanna move on to the money beliefs because
Mhm.
you mentioned how you struggle with, like, even, like, paying your groceries for a week. So, how has your relationship with money developed during this journey, and what resources have you
Mhm.
used?
Yeah, okay, so it actually starts, like, even before, having my own business and everything,
Mhm.
because I have, like, 2 opposite parents. My mom, she'll save a penny anywhere she can, you know? And my dad is like, "Well, we have money, we should spend it," you know?
That's my parents too.
Yeah, so completely opposite. So I've always been somewhere in the middle where it's like, well, I
Mm,
wanna have savings, but I also wanna splurge a little bit
mm,
whenever I can, you know? And so, there's been points in my life where I've had, like, no money. The first time was in college, because
mm.
we're we're struggling in college and, I remember I only had money for ramen, So, like, I've
Yeah.
been there before. And it's crazy because I feel like a lot of people have this perception that, I've always been this spoiled girl, like, because my dad's always done so well.
Mm,
But like I told you, it's because he works from sundown to sun up, you know? I
yeah.
mean, whatever that is,
Yeah.
whatever that means. And so it's like I've always appreciated his work and I've never felt spoiled just because he, like I said, is willing to spend, whatever he makes. But
Mhm,
anyway, so when I was in the position of being able to move out, I really planned it. I said I'm gonna have my
mm,
savings. I'm gonna make sure I have enough to pay the bills
yeah.
for X amount of months. I think I had enough for like 3 months, and we'll be
You built
good.
up your emergency fund.
Hmm. Yeah, exactly. Which I feel like is something that not a lot of people prepare you to do. Like
Mhm.
it was just something like that I thought of, but I feel like more people should really,
Do that. Yes.
yeah, do that. So anyway, so when I moved out, I was like, I'm good. Like I was feeling, like on top of the world. I was finally my own place. This is what I've been working for. This is one of the
Mm,
goals that I've wanted to reach, especially my own home for my daughter and I. And so it felt so good. So then when I was starting to run out of money, it was kind of this thing where I was almost
mm,
in denial of it,
yeah.
because I was like, "There's no way, like, where did it all go?" But it was,
Yeah.
it was furniture and, like, the realization of bills, like, they come every month, So it's funny too, because I always tell people, like, I felt like I was 18, like, moving out for the first time, like, all of these, like,
Mm,
shocking factors of what it actually means to be self-sufficient or employed, but also, like, have your own place, like, it's not
mm,
all, like that it's cut out to be. I mean, it can because I've made it that way now, but in the beginning, I was like, "Oh my gosh." So I was starting to run out of money, and I was also feeling like kind of a cloud again of depression,
mm,
just because I had so many expectations of moving out, especially because I was at home for so long. Like, I'm
mm,
29, I moved out at 28.
mm,
So I felt like I had all these expectations of I'm gonna feel so free. I'm gonna be able to decorate my house the way I want. Like if I want loud music, my parents can't tell me no. But eventually, like that kind of faded because I was like, well, now I have more responsibilities. Like now I have
mm,
a whole house to clean versus just my little solo room in their house. Now, I have to feed us 3 times a day, plus snacks and all this stuff. So all the pressure was just really getting to me, and I remember even calling my cousin. I was like, "How do you do it?" Um, yeah, I was starting to feel the pressure, and then again, like having my emergency fund running out, I really thought to myself, like, what am I gonna do, you know?
Mhm.
And it was one of those instances where I didn't want to reach out for help just yet, like
Mm.
I was like, maybe like I can think of something because I was about to finish working on my orders that I had. And because I was feeling this cloud over me, I thought, well, I can't take on new orders because I won't be able to fulfill them, like just out of, like
Mm.
this mental state that I was in. I knew like there's no way. So I kind of took some time and I was really budgeting and kind of just like scraping by.
Mm.
And even with my daughter, I feel like she didn't even notice it because we did like move in with a bunch of stuff that we already had. And so at the time, I was like, well, I can't let it show that I'm struggling, just for her sake. And almost
Mhm.
for mine too. I was like, I have to prove that I can get myself out of this before I go, running like to my parents and saying like, please help me,
Mm.
So yeah, at the time when I was running out of money to where the point where I didn't have enough for groceries, I just started thinking like, what can I sell? Like
Mm.
um if I was looking around and I was like, well, I still have all this fabric. So I remember there was fabric that I wanted to use for a new launch. And I said, forget the launch, like I need food, So I sold the fabric. Luckily, like it's custom fabric, so I got a good chunk of change out of that. And I was like, all right, we're gonna do good. We're gonna be okay. And I even had like some digital products that I had on Etsy, and I was like, okay, those are still selling. Like, there's still some money flow. Like, we'll be okay.
Mhm.
Um, but then once those kind of were out of the question, and we were really like, almost negative, that's when I was like, I can't do it. It almost
Mm.
felt like back to that initial point of how my motherhood journey started. It's like, wow, I failed again.
Mm.
But but then that's when I did get an order because my website was still up. And so I got an order and I thought to myself, this is it. Like this means we're gonna be okay. And because I had felt so low, that's why I felt so high once I got the order. And that's why I wanted to share with my TikTok audience. I was like, man, my TikToks have been so sad recently because that's just the way that I was feeling. I was like, let me share like this little sprinkle of joy to them.
Mm.
And before I knew it, like more people wanted to help out. And it wasn't this thing of like, oh my gosh, guys, like, please help us. It was just me saying I'm so grateful to this person that ordered because now we have money for our groceries this week. Like now I have something to look forward to, and you literally helped us when we really needed it. And I think again, like people resonated with that. They saw, my gratitude, which was out of this world at the time. Like, thank you. Um, so yeah, my now my relationship with money, I'm still in a I heard this term the other day. It's like I'm still in a like I don't have it mindset.
Mm.
Just because I don't want to get to that point again. Just because I've seen how stressful it is to think like, what if I can't pay my bills this month? And now that I have a daughter that relies on me, I don't want to get to that
Mm.
point. But I am still, going out and out to the mall and stuff like that. So I'm trying to balance it. I'm trying to find that balance of yeah, we're good, but I don't wanna splurge, any chance I get. I don't wanna overdo it, but
Mm.
I also wanna make sure, especially because in my business, it's so up and down, like, it's
Yeah.
not a consistent paycheck every 2 weeks. It's always up and down, so I wanna make sure that uh, I have this mindset of, well, in case anything happens,
Mm.
I don't wanna
Like,
overspend when I don't need to?
yeah, I think with like the whole like money mindset, I think one of
Mhm.
the mindsets that we need to have is the abundance mindset, where it's like I don't know how to explain it, but it kind of like talks for itself. It's like you have to feel like you deserve this money, and like
Mhm.
everything that there's like everything you want is like you it's gonna come because again there's an abundance of it. So there's an abundance of money. And they say that money is energy. So if you feel like you don't deserve money, that money is hard to come by, or money goes away really quick, then that's what's gonna happen because again it's energy. So energy is gonna like, okay, I don't want to be here. Bye. And so
Mhm.
we gotta change those thoughts to like making money is hard to like money. I don't. Where's like money is if I have the solution to it, then I'm able to sell this, and that, and then money's gonna come to me. I don't know. This is just like me out of my head, on top of my head. But
Mhm.
yeah, it's like changing those perspectives. And then there's like this at the end of the year, I did this money letter where it's like
Mhm.
you write down. I'll put a link on the description for like those who want to check it out and probably have the explanation better. But pretty much what it was is like um as talking about like how you treated money, and then asking for like forgiveness, and then talking about like the commitment that you're gonna do now with money and how you're gonna treat it, because how he explained it is that um money and you want to treat money as a relationship. Like someone,
Mhm.
like if he or she, money, whatever pronoun you want to give it, if he or she was your friend, then you wouldn't be treating her like, oh yeah, you know what, I don't deserve you, like stay away from me. It's more like, oh,
Uh-huh.
like I want you next to me, I want you
Mhm.
being with me in these experiences of like being able to like how you like splurge out or like buy this thing because I can't afford it, instead of like saying like, oh, you know what, I don't want to do that. So yeah, and then like the whole thing of like actual financial education, because there's like the logical side and then there's like the emotional side. So yeah, that's like super important. Have you read like any books in regards to like money?
No, I haven't just because like I said, like my relationship with money is that people assume I have it, so I feel like
Mm,
no, it's this weird dynamic of I don't want people to ever see me as like not humble.
mm,
But I don't know where that comes from. I think it's just because I've had like judgmental family members in the past
mm,
who have said like, "Oh, you're only well off because of your dad," you know, or
mm.
so if people in my family are telling me that, then in a way, it's like I almost believe it. So it's crazy that you said like that we should have an abundance mindset because I try to like manifest, you know,
Yes, I
and
love
I'm
that.
I'm all about I'm all about it, but for some reason manifesting money just I don't know it. I never want to come across like money hungry, you know? So it's hard for me to I guess that's one of the things where I feel like I deserve money, but it's like, why? I've worked hard for it, you know?
Yeah,
There's been times where I've seen my bank account and I'm like, "Ooh, that's pretty good," you know?
like look at that. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
there's oh man, there's oh being ambitious. It's like
Mhm.
people think that you shouldn't be ambitious because again, how people are gonna see it is like, oh yeah, it's bad. But in reality, like no, like having ambition is good. Like you wanting more money is good. However, I think like where people um can say like they see it wrong is because when there's like this, I don't know where I saw it, but it's like money is like if you have whoever you are like now, it's like if you have more money, that personality, like who you are, is just gonna amplify. I think that's the word, amplify more. So if
Mhm.
you're like a greedy person, even when you don't have money, when you have money, you're gonna be more greedy. But if you're like humble and then you have more money, and that's like you're truly humble, then once you have that money, you're gonna share with other people. You're gonna
Mhm.
donate to communities that need it. You know, you're gonna create like these little projects that money allows you to do. And if you didn't have that money, you're just gonna be saying like, oh, I could help these people, but I don't have the money. So how am I gonna do it? But if you have
Mhm.
like that good relationship with money, and And it all goes back to like looking at your limiting beliefs, or like how you said, like I have these judgmental family members, but where are they? Not to, not to judge your family or anything, but it's like where
Uh-huh.
are they now? Like who are they truly? For,
Mhm.
like if they're telling me this, should I really be following their advice? And it was the same video that I talked about, like Marco Antonio Regila Nilda. She said she's so cute because she's like I'm gonna give this advice, but it's like people are not gonna like it.
Mhm.
And then she like giggled. It's like so funny. And then and then she was like, and then in this example she said about her mom, like this could be anybody really. She's
Uh-huh.
like, mom, if my mom like tells me this, like gives me advice where it's not that great, or like that, or like you shouldn't be making a lot of money. Let's say she's like, tell your mom this, or put whoever family member or whatever person is like, I'm not, I'm gonna like not say like how she said it, but the
Mhm.
gist of it is like, I'm not gonna follow your advice because if I follow your advice, I'm gonna end up having the life that you had, and I don't like your life, so I'm not following it. And I was like, what?
Wow,
I
mic
was
drop.
literally when I heard that, I was like, that's crazy, and it's true though. It's true, like how however bad it feels, or how much like puñetazo it is like holy, like it's true. Like you gotta do what you want, like whatever you believe that, like you do you, and if that like be open to feedback. Yeah, that be open to
Mhm.
feedback. But at the end of the day, it's your choice whether you want that feedback or not, or whether you're gonna let that influence you. So yeah, I just want to share that because for me that was crazy, and I'll leave the link below because y'all gotta watch that episode. For yeah, okay, so we talk about, oh, and some recommendations I give about money is like, The Psychology of Money, The Simple Path to Wealth, which talks about investment and like the literally the simple way to do it.
Mhm.
Um, I have it right here, like The Secrets of the Millionaire Mind. That one's also a good book. It talks more about like, the emotional side, or like the limiting beliefs that we have about money. And I think those are the top three. Oh, and the Richest Man in Babylonian. That was also a really good book. I haven't finished it, but I'm planning on this year at some point. But those are like my book recommendations. And I wanna, since we're almost on our time, like an hour,
Mhm.
my last question is, with this whole journey, what are like the top moments that you've had besides the video that you posted, like, and having all that growth? Because that I feel
Mhm.
like you shared it a bit, but besides that one, because that one's a really big one, what are the
Mhm.
other top experiences that you've had in your journey?
Okay, so this one I guess is kind of a negative one, but it helped me because I had posted my sweaters on Facebook actually,
Mhm.
and there was backlash.
Mm.
So prepare yourself for this. Someone was telling me that I wasn't Latina enough to sell the items that I'm now selling. Because like you said, I found this way to kind of shift the products that I'm selling.
Mhm.
And like you said, like I found this newfound passion for it, and it's like, yes, like I love it, and I feel like more connected to my roots and my culture because I have like so many ideas of, things that I heard growing up and, things
Mm.
that the novellas and all this stuff. So it's like been really fun for me, right? But yeah, so there was this backlash, and it really struck me as odd because, I'm secure in my roots and, in who I am as a person. And I've always been a proud Mexicana, you know? So to hear someone say like, "Oh, this is just a bandwagon for her. This is a money grab for her. She's never had Latina customers." They were saying like all this bunch of stuff, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm sitting here like, "What? Where?"
I
Like,
haven't even
where are you getting
yeah.
this information from? So it was really crazy, and I just felt like so taken aback by it. But it actually turned out to be, like I said, a good experience because it made me realize, like, I don't have anything to prove? Because
Mm.
so far in my experience, like, I have had, like, a lot of support, a lot of love. So it kind of was necessary for me to have this experience for me to
Mhm.
fully, like, embrace, my new journey in my business and really appreciate even more, like, the people who support me,
Mhm.
because it made me realize, like, I didn't even wanna say anything back to them because it made me realize, like, I don't have anything to prove.
Mm.
You know, like, what I show is who I am and what I love and what I believe and, everything that I'm promoting, like, that's me, you know? And
Mhm.
if it didn't come across that way to someone, like, that's their issue. And
Yep,
so
literally.
anyway and so anyway, it all boiled down to, this phrase that I heard on TikTok, actually, it's like, "Yo no me creo más, tú te crees menos."
Ooh,
And I was like, "That's your" so again, I'm like, "That's
it's your
your
issue.
issue." Yeah, exactly. So, and I had, like, some wonderful friends, wanna come to my rescue, and they were like, "You have no business saying this to Carla," like, "She's
Mhm.
out here, like, trying to take up space on TikTok for us," because it was a Latinx group, and so that's why I promoted on there. Um,
Mm.
they're like, "Yeah, she" and that's right. They're right. I do wanna take up space on TikTok. Like, we do need more
Yep.
creators who look like us, speak like us, have experience, our upbringings and everything that comes with being first generation Latina, you know?
Yep.
I was like, yeah, you guys are right. And then it all boiled down to, maybe this person is jealous and that's it. If they
Mhm.
cannot see another Latina winning, and celebrate it, then again, that's their issue because I've always said, if I can do it, so can you. Like,
So
what
can
is
you. Mhm.
stopping you? What is stopping you? And that's how I perceive any time that I see, one of us, like you starting your podcast. Literally, I was like, that is so awesome. I'm not over here like, oh my gosh, I wish I could start a podcast. No. Like, there's so much jealousy I feel like embedded with just, like, what it means to be a Latina, we're always seen as, like, the cat fighters and all this
Mm.
stuff, and it's like,
Yeah.
no, like, so many of us want to, cheer each other on and say,
Mhm.
like, "Yeah, you're doing it, and we're all doing it for each other?" So,
Yep.
again, it just took, like, that kinda negative experience for it to really come full circle for me and let me know, like, this is what I wanna do, you know?
Yeah, you
Like, no
got
matter
clarity out of it.
Yeah, exactly. It really made me see like, wow. And I even remember telling my parents and they were like, "What?" Like, yeah, and even they wanted to like come to my rescue and I was like, "No, like I
Like,
think
where
I'm
they
good."
at?
Yeah, but I was like, "No, I think I'm good," like 'cause like I told you, I didn't have a I didn't even like care to say anything back, because I could have been
Mhm.
like, "No, like I had enchiladas for lunch, and like, "No, I lived in Mexico for you." Like, there was no need to
Prove yourself.
prove how Latina I am, and I think that's a conversation maybe for another time because it's like, it's so crazy, like, are we Latina enough for the Latinos? And then, like, we're not American enough, and
Yeah.
so it's always like this having to prove ourselves, but it's like and then I don't feel the need to do that, and even so, like, whenever I'm speaking Spanish, like, I get a little timid because it was my first language, but then I kinda lost it, so even
Oh,
things like
same.
that, I'm like, "No, like, I speak the way I speak, and that's okay," like, Spanglish,
Yeah.
that's a thing.
That's actually something I'm trying because for me, when I speak Spanish too, they say,
Mhm.
either I feel like gringa or like even like now it's or sometimes they say I don't have an accent. So like when I speak Spanish,
Mhm.
like typically there's like the Mexican accent, but they say I don't have it too. So I'm like, oh, okay. And then I'm actually gonna do an episode with somebody I already interviewed, but it was in
Mhm.
English, and her content, she also does bilingual. So she asked me if we could do it in Spanish, and I like instantly said yes. But then after that, I was like, "Oh wait, I don't know how to. My Spanish is
Uh-huh.
not that great. Like, oh fuck, what
Mhm.
did I do?" But like I know I could like put my message. Like I know I could like have a conversation in Spanish. So I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna do it. And
Mhm.
yeah, and just like being okay with like however my Spanish sounds. So yeah, I just wanted to share because like it's true. It's yeah, it's true.
Mhm.
Okay, do you have any other experiences?
Oh, yeah, so another experience that really shaped me is kind of showing my mom, like, this is what I'm proud of? Because for the longest time, my mom has been super against cussing
Mm,
and So I was very nervous for her to see, like, everything is like, "Oh, pendeja this, chingona this," like,
Mm, yeah.
so it was really just a way again of just me saying, like, I have nothing to be ashamed of, like, you know? So I remember she came over to help me package, and I was so nervous. I was like, "Oh my gosh, like, I'm about to get a scolding," you know?
So she didn't know that you had the
Mhm.
okay,
Yeah,
the
I
rights.
hadn't told her, and in fact, I was actively trying to hide it from her. Like, whenever she would come over, I'd be like, "Oh, okay, the sweaters," or only show the, like, the cutesy ones, you know? And so when she came over with my dad, because initially it was just gonna be my dad helping me package my
Mhm,
sweaters. And so when she came over, I got so nervous. I was like, "She's gonna read them right away," and I was like, "Maybe no trajo sus lentes, like, she won't read." But it actually helped that my dad was there 'cause he was like, "Holy look, wife," you know? So I feel like a lot of this year is just me, like, facing things head on, kind of like how I initially faced things when I first became a mother, like, no, now it's time to face things that I'm afraid of maybe people perceiving about me,
mhm,
and not just, with, like, the public, but people in my life that I care about and that I love and that maybe I've molded myself to be different in front of,
mm,
and kind of just stop doing that, you know, because that takes effort and that takes so like, it's exhausting to be someone else around certain people. So I'm learning to, fully embrace myself, and that was, like, the catalyst, you know? That
mm,
experience with my mom was the catalyst of, like, maybe the reaction I think I'm gonna get is not what I'm gonna get, you know? Like, the
it
reaction
goes
I'm
back
afraid. Yeah.
it goes back to expectations, like, what from
Mhm.
which lens are you actually, like, looking at it from. Yeah, that's awesome.
Exactly. So, yeah, so I thought I was gonna get one, reaction, and ni pasó. I'm like, all that anxiety, all that hiding, all that was for nothing, you know? Like, so I
Mm,
think finally I'm at this point where I'm like, again, like I said, proud of what I'm doing, proud of who I am, proud of what I've accomplished, and now it's time to, not let anyone stop me from being
mhm.
myself and being authentic, you know?
Yeah, it's so awesome. Like, your story is, like, so inspiring. I feel like I okay, there's, like, so much I could talk about more because there's, like,
Mhm.
the whole point about, like, growing your business and how you're planning on scaling it, like, I like talking about that, but we don't have much time anymore because it's, like, an hour and 20, something like that.
Mhm.
But, and this could always be, like, part 2 because you also mentioned about not being Latina enough and or being too American. That's something not that I didn't know about, but something I want to open myself more because I'm like very you could say like isolated. I don't really talk about these things, but then I see people talking about this like, oh, like what do they mean not Latina? Because there's some that they've the people that I've interviewed, some of them have mentioned that, and I was like, oh, that's kind of like interesting. Like, do I feel not Mexican enough? Because I never really had
Mhm.
that conversation. So like, huh? But yeah, that could be like a conversation part 2, your growth, your growing your business and scaling it, all of that. And then yeah, just seeing how your journey evolves
Mhm.
throughout the time, through this year. And so I want to end by thanking you for being here, for sharing your story, for being honest and like being vulnerable like through this whole thing. So I know like for some people it might not be easy. So thank you for that. Can you share your social media handles for those who want to support
Oh,
you and all of
yeah.
that?
Mhm. Yeah, for sure. So it's just Foxy Luna Shop everywhere, like Facebook, TikTok,
Mhm.
Instagram. We're even on YouTube.
On YouTube,
So,
yes.
yeah, Foxy Luna Shop everywhere.
Yeah, I'll definitely leave your social media handles in the descriptions, and also do a specific link for your shop so like those who are ready to go buy your clothes. I probably like try to put pictures in here to see how awesome they are, and like go check them out. Again, thank you. You're always welcome back. And for those who are listening, don't forget to give us a review or rate us in Spotify or Apple Podcasts, wherever you're listening. And in YouTube, don't forget to give us a like, a comment, a subscribe, and share it with anybody who you think might have some value out of this because there's a lot of valuable information in here. So thank you, everybody. Thank you, Carla, for being here, and see you in the next episode. Bye.